Hi, this is Tony Robbins. Listen, I want to thank you for making this investment in yourself because of all the subjects that you and I could tackle to make a difference in the quality of our lives. Health is it. Because if you don't feel good, your relationship certainly doesn't tend to grow and expand in its quality. Neither does your career, your economics, your ability to impact your kids. I mean, really, energy is life. And the more of it we have, the better we feel. And I don't know why you picked up this program. If you're one of those people that wants to lose weight and you finally said, I've had it, I'm taking my life to another level. Or if you're doing really well and you just want to increase your energy. Or if you're one of those people that are underweight and you're saying, you know what, I want to absolutely shape my body to where it needs to be. Whatever your goals are, you need to understand that health is the goal. I know a lot of people that are fit, but they're unhealthy. So this program is how do we get so healthy that our body will adjust to its natural weight, that our energy becomes the vibrant daily aspect of living that we expect, rather than something we build up to psychically by pumping ourselves up emotionally or psychologically. This is a natural state for all of us, but what we've got to do is follow some simple laws. And if we follow those, we don't have to give up our life. We don't have to become crazy or fanatical to be able to have the energy we deserve. And with that, the sense of excitement about waking up in the morning, the sense of excitement about all the aspects of your life. So I'm thrilled that you're here with me. And I'm very excited to share this format with you because it's live seminar format. And most of my tapes, is me talking directly to you, and I actually like that form immensely. But we've had so many requests saying, could we please hear a live seminar? Because Tony's a maniac in that environment. So if you're willing to deal with the maniac, you'll find these tapes rather interesting. And I really, really want to say to you, don't just listen. Do what we're talking about here. And if some of it is different than your own beliefs, I totally respect you. You don't have to do everything I teach, but try it for 10 days. Because if you'll do what I'm talking about for 10 days, you'll be able to judge by results in your own body. In addition, I'm also very excited to introduce you to a man named Dr. Robert Young. Dr. Young is a research scientist and one of the most brilliant people that I've found in this area, and he's made a radical shift in some of my own thinking about some fundamental principles in terms of how to increase that level of energy. And so at the end of this program, I have a Power Talk interview with Dr. Young, and I have to tell you, no matter who I've put him in contact with, I've seen a transformation in their health at a level that before I would never think was possible. And the science of what he's created, I think, will definitely hook you. So be sure when you're done listening to the Normal Living Health program live to continue with those bonus tapes of Dr. Young that'll give you a great foundation for knowing how to implement this level of energy that I know you're committed to. So without any further ado, let's get started and let's go live to our Living Health program. I wish you all the best. Let's rock. Today is the subject that I started my career with, health. And to me, health sounds kind of wimpy. Health. What it really was for me is energy. Or maybe even a better description of today. Today is about the power of the ultimate force that exists in your universe, that force that gives you life. That force that makes your heart beat 100,000 times a day without you ever having to think about it. Making about 3,000 to 5,000 trips through 1,000 miles of arteries and capillaries. That's what's inside of you. They took them all out, laid them side by side. It's amazing. And this is all happening. You got this little lump of matter called a brain. It weighs about 3 pounds, and it runs the most magnificent system on the face of the earth. And it does it with less supposed power than anything else that would exist in terms of computer power. It can store more information. Your little brain, besides running everything perfectly simultaneously, it can store more information than you could put in the World Trade Centers with today's technology, which is as miniaturized as you can imagine. It would take the Hudson River to try and keep it cool. And yet our bodies do that every moment with all the demands we make on it. We have liver cells that are working right now that have 50,000 enzymes in each liver cell doing its job more than 1,000 times a second. Your eyes make 10 million distinctions in milliseconds, 10 million different distinctions to let you know what's going on. All your muscles, if they all pulled in one direction instead of contracting against each other, you could pull several tons. Your body is the most magnificent structure on the face of the earth. And absolutely the most magnificent thing, and most of us take this wealth for granted. In fact, we abuse it. In fact, most of us think we're fragile, and that some little bug's gonna sneak into us one day and take us down. Give us the flu and have us spitting up all this phlegm. or maybe something worse, an AIDS or a cancer or whatever the case may be. I'm here to tell you that you are not fragile. I'm here today. My primary outcome today is not just tell you what to do, but to remind you of what is true. Because we live in a cultural hypnosis that has taught us that we are fragile, that things can just happen to us, rather than what is natural, which is health and energy. Emerson said, the day in the life of one human being's body is enough to steal all the luster from fiction. What goes on here is so magnificent, and if you ever start to really study it, it'll change your self-esteem overnight. Because you see how powerful you really are. But what's happened is we have a set of belief systems, and whatever we believe, when we look for what we believe, we look for brown, we find it, as you've learned this weekend. And what I want to do this weekend is give you, or today I should say, is a second opinion. It is my opinion, it's backed up by thousands and thousands of researchers, and I'll back up everything I say. But it's another opinion. If you go to one mindset of person who's been trained a certain way, they're going to give you one mindset. Doesn't mean they're right, doesn't mean I'm right, doesn't mean they're wrong. You have to sit today and say, does this make sense to me? And while I'll document every single thing I'm going to talk to you about by the top researchers who have all the social proof you'll recognize from the top universities, doctors, hospitals, researchers, etc., you also have to be willing at times to say, I'm going to enter a little common sense corner in my brain and say, what am I really going to believe? And the best way then to decide something is not just to believe it, but to test it with your own body. And I'm going to ask you at the end of today to give yourself a 10-day test, just to see if what I'm saying makes any sense. You don't have to believe a word I say. You can just test with your body and judge by results. And if you do that, you will have a brand new life as a result of this day. This day could be as powerful as any other day. So, my goals today for you are a couple. Then, number one, it's to really affect your philosophy about this thing called your health, which really means the force of life, your energy. I really want to affect that philosophy, the way you look at health and the way you look at dis-ease. And I'm going to spend the first half of the day not talking about the solution, which is what I do 99.9% of the time. I want to talk to you about the problem and with it the solution. Because if we don't understand the problem, it's so pervasive about what currently is guiding us is this country in terms of health, then what will happen is the next time you'll listen to all the new things I tell you or all the simple tools, you go, yeah, I'll do that until you get ill. And then you go right back to the old hypnosis. I've watched it. So unless we interrupt the current what? Pattern, we'll have no possibility of creating an alternative that you'll really follow through on. So I'm going to really go at you with this, and I want to tell you up front, this is my opinion backed up by thousands of people, but I understand it's a point of view, and if you disagree, I'm totally okay with it. But I will tell you up front that I'll tell you now it's my opinion. After this, I will no longer operate from that frame of reference. Because I got to try and give you a second opinion that you rarely will hear with a tremendous amount of intensity and passion that comes from my heart and soul and caring for you. And what I say to you is take everything I've got, write it down, take notes. Don't argue with it yet. Take it in. Don't let your current belief systems block any of it out. Just take it in first, and then test it, and then respond. Because if you react to me, then what's happening is you're responding to your belief systems rather than what I'm actually sharing. How many want to be a little bit open today, be a little bit flexible in your approach? Say aye. Excellent. So I want to affect your philosophy towards health. Number two, I want you to be able to eliminate fear. My major goal, what hurts me inside when I see people, is I see people live in so much fear, and probably the greatest fears people have to do with health. These things that affect them in various areas of their life. So I want to make sure we eliminate that because that was one of the greatest gifts that happened in my life. Three, I want to massively change the level of energy you naturally experience, not just you demand. Every one of you has given a tremendous amount of energy this weekend, but most of you by demand. And that's part of having energy, is building the muscle. But the other part is having the reserves capable, so when you make the demand, you don't run out of steam. You're not doing it unhealthfully. Because I began to study years ago, I used to remember hearing the words health and hearing the words fitness. And which one do you think I moved towards? Which one do you think? Fitness was what I want to move towards. Because that health, mamby-pamby, kind of weak. Fitness, now that's something I can get into, right? But what's true is there are a lot of people that are healthy and unfit. A lot of people that are fit but unhealthy. Fitness does not guarantee health. Do you remember Jim Fixx, the runner? Wrote the running books? What did he die of? Heart attack, right? He was very fit, but unbelievably unhealthy. So fitness is that ability to have this endurance and this drive and this demand, which I really value. But if you don't have health as your base, you will burn out. That's the person who goes out on the tennis court and they look good, they don't seem to have any extra weight or anything else. They're 40 years old, having a great time, and they drop dead of a heart attack right there. They were fit but unhealthy. I want to make sure you leave here with energy that comes from health, not just from the strength of fitness. And then to build on that, a sense of fitness that'll give you a sense of power, like you've never had before as well. And lastly, I want to make sure you have fun today too. Because I think if you enjoy this, and if you can look at this, some of these things with a sense of humor, especially some of the things I'm going to do in the second half of the day, I think you will never forget what we talk about. Because the second half of the day, you will laugh a lot, but it's kind of like when you think about your old belief systems and you have a new association to those. Well, some of the things you were certain about before you got here, you may feel similar about by the end of this day. So how did I get into this? Well, when I was very young, I always wanted to be successful, accomplish things, and so I worked very hard, as most of you know, to study principles that would help me succeed. And a lot of that was driven by my background. And so sure enough, I worked real hard. I became quote-unquote successful, which by my standards as a young kid was I made a lot of money. And I made this money, I was 19 years old, and I was earning at that time about $10,000 a month, which is a lot of money for most people, but definitely a lot of money for a 19-year-old kid, because you have no overhead, right? You know? So it's definitely a lot of money in that case, right? So I'm making all this money, I'm becoming so successful, like all these great things coming, and everything in my life was flowing. I was touching people's lives, I was doing what I loved. I felt like I was walking through life, living my purpose, doing what my spirituality really means, which is to contribute in a meaningful way. So I felt all these great feelings, so much so that it was not what I was used to, and I got outside my comfort zone, and so my brain started asking interesting questions like, how come I have all this already at 19? I got all these great friends, I have all these people I love and love me, I've got all this money, you know, I do what I love, I'm extremely successful. How come I got it at 19? You're supposed to wait till you're like 50 or 60 to get this kind of stuff, right? At least 45. So then my brain figured out, it's because I'm gonna die young. I swear to God, that's what I thought. And then I didn't just get the thought in my head, but I started obsessing about it. And I go to night and I sleep. And I didn't think I was gonna die like easily, like real quick, bam, you know, truck take me out crossing the street. No. I was gonna waste away of cancer. And I would see these people, I had chemotherapy, and I'd look at them and thinking, I don't think I'd want the treatment. That looks worse than the death. You know, and I'd see some people I cared about who went through this process, and I watched them just waste away. And so I had these images so clear in my mind. And I would wake up in the middle of the night with cold sweats, because I just knew I had all this now at this young age because I wasn't gonna be here very long. And what changed me, what broke my pattern, if you focus on something long enough, what tends to happen? You tend to experience it. Fortunately for me, I didn't actually physically experience it, but a very, very close friend of mine, a lady friend of mine at the time, came to see me, and I was in this stress mode, and I was stressed about everything, even though I was succeeding. And she came up to me one day, and she goes, hi, and she started crying. I said, what's the matter? And she says, you know when people cry and they can't get to their breath? And I said, what is the matter? Because this is my mother. This is my mother. I said, your mother what? She said, my mother has cancer. It's like, ooh, stay away from me. I mean, it's like, it scared the hell out of me. But at the same time, for most of my life, I've focused and built an identity in myself about I'm a person who can make a difference for anybody. So even then, I stepped forward and I said, hey, it's okay. And I want to break her pattern and help her out. You know, I said, it's okay. I said, look, hundreds of thousands of people have gotten cancer and beat it. I know we don't hear much about it, but it's a fact. I mean, listen, all we got to do, I'm into modeling, right? All we got to do is find people who had cancer and got rid of it. Find out exactly what they do, find out what they did in common, and model that. If we model what most people do, we'll get what most people got, which is most people die of it. I said, listen, I'm a speed reader. I will go out, and I said, I'm going to find the answer for her. I don't care what it is. Don't you worry. And I swore to her I'd find the answer. So I said, I'm going to go out and read 30 books in 30 days. All in the area of nutrition, health, fitness, figure out what I could do to really understand what was going on in the body so I could help her. And I did. I read 30 books in 30 days, and at the end of 30 days, I was totally confused. I was, because you'd read one book here, and it was by this PhD, right? He had every credential in the world from Harvard. He says, do this and this and this, and you'll live forever. And then, of course, I read the next book, and it says, it's by a guy who's equally qualified, right? And he says, if you do that, that, and that, you'll be dead tomorrow. Do this and this and this, and you'll live forever. I remember at the time, these two books, later on, several weeks later on the news, these two men started suing each other, right, in the public forum, talking about how each one of them was dead wrong. So I'm just sitting here going, so after enough of this stuff, I finally said, you know what I got to do? Since there's so many people who have so many opinions who are equally qualified, what I got to do is I got to create for myself something, as I'm synthesizing, pull the best from each of them, what makes common sense to me. Instead of saying, I'm not smart enough to figure this out, I got to give all this up to someone else who's an expert, I'm going to become an expert on the most important force I have that I carry my life through, my body. I'm not going to give that up to somebody else and hope they make the right choice. So I'm going to go with what's common sense, and then I'm going to take what's common sense and I'm going to test it in my own body. And I'm going to help other people do the same. So sure enough, I started studying all these things, and I came across several books, and I went back to this woman who had the cancer, and I met her and got a chance to develop a relationship with her. And she had cancer the size of like baseballs, tumors on her shoulders and in her female organ. And it was pretty intense. And the doctor gave her 9 weeks to live. And he said he didn't really think surgery would do any good. But then he reevaluated, he talked to another doctor, and they said, well, she might live as much as 4 months, and that if they went in there and did surgery within 4 weeks, they might be able to do something. They might be able to slow it down. Maybe she could live 6 months or a year. They all argued about how long she was going to live. Not that she was going to live, but if she would live within a year. But he didn't want to operate right away because she had some kind of infection or something like that involved with it as well, and he wanted to give her some medication to do that first before they went into the surgery. So I went to her and I said, listen, read this book. And I gave her a book called One Answer to Cancer, which wouldn't be the book that I would #1 recommend today, but it talked about this man who had cancer. He was told he had 4 weeks to live, and he completely eliminated all the tumors from his body. And he did it all without using any invasive drugs, no chemotherapy, nothing like that. And so he talked about exactly what he did, what his method was. And I said, listen, they say you're going to die, so you can just accept that, and maybe you still will. But I said, you know, if this guy did it, and this seems similar to some of the other things I read, why don't you at least try this? And then I gave her a second book, and that second book was by a man named James Allen called As a Man Thinketh, a book you should write down and go get. It's a little tiny book, but it's a classic. And basically what it says is what we already know, that as you think in your heart, so are you. So you become. As you think, so you become. Because I realized that you can't just take care of the physical side, that the mental side of us affects our biochemistry as well, and have to do both. And I figured if we didn't change her mental side, she probably wouldn't make the shift. So she got As a Man Thinketh, she started reading it, she started reading this other man's book, and within a few days she got started on this program of detoxifying her body, getting the poisons that were in her body out without cutting it open. And so she did this, and she did a variety of things, and I'll tell you some of those things tonight as we go through these processes. But all I can tell you is that within 4 weeks, she'd lost 28 pounds. Now, most of those pounds she lost in the toilet, by the way, in waste that was coming out of her like it was going out of style. All this poison that was inside of her screaming out of her system. And within 4 weeks, you couldn't see, at least, anything protruding at all in her shoulders. 4 weeks. So she goes back to the doctor, and he says, well, you know, you're looking much better. Maybe we'll wait a few more weeks. So he said, we'll wait to the 9-week segment because it looks like you're doing a little bit better. But he said, we got to go in and cut it out. So after about 7 or 8 weeks, she's feeling phenomenal. She's in the best fitness of her life, best health of her life. She doesn't feel any sense of dis-ease in her body. And she comes to me and she says, I talked to the doctor, he wants to operate. Now, I'm a 19-year-old kid at this time, right? And she says, what should I do? And I said, oh, great. I said, I tell you not to do the surgery and you die of cancer, and that's on my head for the rest of my life. I said, I can't tell you what to do. I'm just, getting started myself. But I'll tell you one thing, if it was me, I'd at least wait a little longer since you don't seem to have any, semblance of anything the matter with you anymore. I mean, I'm sure there must be something in there, but obviously you're moving in the right direction. And she said, I totally agree with you. I said, no, don't agree with me. I said, you do this on your own, right? This is life. This is your decision. I can't do this for you. The same thing is true for all of you today. I can only tell you what I believe. So she said, okay, but I just want you to know I'm not going to do it. I said, well, great. I'm glad for you. 2 weeks later, she went in for the surgery. Why? Because there's an interesting thing that happens to us as human beings. When we get in a state of uncertainty, when there's a lot on the line, when there's a fear of loss, especially our health, most of us don't see ourselves as being qualified to make decisions about our own bodies. So we look to those people who seem to have more certainty. Now, because someone has more certainty, does that mean they're right? Yes or no? No. And we as a culture have been taught to respect authority. And so I'm very supportive of doctors. I have a practice management company called Fortune Practice Management. And all we do is manage doctors' businesses for them and help them to create a life. So I'm not against doctors. I don't want you to get the wrong impression. But a doctor is a coach, just like I am. And you can't give me the responsibility. You can't give him the responsibility. No doctor is God. They're all human beings who make mistakes and do great things both. So you got to look at them in that light. And these people work unbelievably hard. They care immensely about people. But many are completely overworked, and they have a difficult time keeping up because things are changing so rapidly. The point of the matter is this guy, all he knows is he's been trained. If you go to a baker, they will bake. If you go to a surgeon, they will cut because that's what they're trained to do. So he decided that we had to go in there anyway because we couldn't take a chance. And he convinced her she would probably die if he didn't do the surgery. And that's usually it. The fear of death will get us to do almost anything. So she put herself in his hands. They cut her open. And guess what they found? Zero, nothing. So he said there must be something there. So he brought her back for exploratory surgery. And imagine what that does to alter the body, to have something going and cutting around. They did find something. All he found was something, the end of my little pinky's fingernail. That's all that was left in her whole body in 9 weeks. So what do you think happened to my belief? First of all, I was euphoric because I felt the sense of, wow, I had contributed to saving a life. But I'll tell you honestly, I saved another life simultaneously. Whose was that? Because I freed myself from the fear, because that was the only thing I thought could stop me in my life. I always thought, man, I know I'm guided, and I feel like God guides us all. I'm in tune with that. I'm here. I've got a life's work. I know what it is, but this is going to take me. It's like zero fear. And when you take away fear, guess what happens to your energy? You know, it just explodes. You can't believe how much energy inside of a human being is suppressed just by fears they don't even realize they have. And so I became an evangelist, you know? And she, by the way, went back and, you know, talked to her doctor and said, look, I don't have anything. It's amazing. I mean, I did this in 9 weeks and everything else. And he said, it's a miracle. She goes, yeah, let me tell you what I did. He said, it's a miracle. She said, no, but let me tell you. He said, it's a miracle. And she said, it is a miracle. And let me tell you, and he just didn't want to hear that. He said, you just better thank God. She said, I do, but I did my part. So, let's take a look. Why don't you open your book and let's take a look at where we're going to deal with our belief systems first, because that shapes everything, right? Our belief systems. Because we got to say, okay, everything human beings do is driven by their beliefs. All behavior is belief driven. So let's take a look and say, what are the organizing principles or beliefs, I put you here in your notes here, that are driving your life? So tell me, what are the beliefs, and on page 3 here, it says, what are the primary organizing principles or beliefs that our society conditions us to believe about what is disease and what is health? What do we have to do to avoid it? So tell me, what are some of the limiting beliefs that we get, or that maybe some of us in this room have had? What are some limiting beliefs you've had about health? Raise your hand. Anybody at all? Yes, ma'am.
Don't get near someone that has a cold.
Don't get near someone who has a cold, right? Why not? Well, then you'll catch it. We're going to talk about that one. You're going to find out most of you eat colds rather than catch colds. Yes?
I used to believe that once you get sick or once you catch a cold or something, you immediately take medicine.
Immediately take medicine.
I haven't had it in almost 2 years.
You haven't had a cold in 2 years and you stopped taking medicine. What kind of medicine would you normally take?
Whatever seemed good on the commercials, I guess. Or
whatever seemed good on the commercial.
Yeah.
Very good. Somebody else, organizing principle. Yes, sir. What's a limiting belief about health?
Well, I think that milk gives calcium.
That's milk gives calcium.
I used to believe that.
Used to believe that. Good for you. I'm glad it's a used to believe. Because milk actually leaches calcium from the system, as you're going to find out today. Leaches it. People, the big dairy consumers, have the weakest tensile strength in their bones of anybody. I'll give you the research on it. No question about it. Yes, somebody going, going to take away my milk today? Just remember this. Today is about giving you things. Today is going to be about giving you a series of gifts, and anything that we get rid of will replace with something better that's still tasty. Okay, so you're freaking about your milkshake right now. Don't worry. Stay with me. What are we taught is the source of disease? What is it? Come on. It's germs. It's viruses. It's all these sources. Well, I'm going to show you today what the reality is. And the reality is we are being treated in this country in a way that puts our health at risk very often. Now, am I attacking the medical profession? No. Let me give you a frame of reference. Medical doctors, again, work harder than anybody you probably know. Most people think they're rich off playing golf. I don't know too many that are doing that. I know most of these people have committed their life because they care about human beings. And they will give their heart and soul. They will do it at the expense of their own health, their own emotion, their own families. Most of them go to school for a decade or two, right? And during that time, as soon as they finally make it out of school, guess what they do? After paying for all that education, they now go totally into debt so they can go start a practice usually. And then now they're running full speed trying to help everybody. I'm telling you, these are some of the most special human beings on the planet. I used to attack doctors because I saw the behavior that happened from some doctors, and I get so upset because I saw it hurting people. I don't have that feeling at all. I don't demonize doctors. Doctors are incredible people. But we had put doctors in a horrible position for 2 reasons. Here's a good metaphor for a doctor. A doctor's out there, cares about people, give anything. And one day he's walking by a stream. As he walks by a stream, he hears this yell, help, help, help. And he looks out the stream and sees somebody drowning. Well, he's a good man. A lot of people would just walk by and try and go get some help. Some people would say, oh, I don't know what to do, and freeze. Not a doctor. Doctor cares about people. He jumps in head first at his own risk. It's really strong current, saves the person, drags them out. They're full of water, pumps their chest, gets all the fluid out, gives them mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. The person survives thanks to that doctor's effort. But the minute that doctor finishes the one, all of a sudden, guess what the doctor hears out in the river? 2 yells going, help, help. Oh my God, doctor jumps out in the river, right? Grabs one, grabs the other, drags one by the leg, other by the head, drags them both in, brings them out in the sand, pumps them out like crazy, mouth to mouth to both of them, almost out of breath himself, and all of a sudden saves their lives. Phenomenal. But just as he's finishing, guess what he hears? 4 more screams. Jumps out and there are 4 more screams. He's trying to help everybody, trying to do everything this human being, man or woman, can possibly do as a doctor to help them, drags them both in, pumping them, and while they're still pumping all 4 of them, 8 more screams. In fact, the doctor's so busy helping people, he never has time to go upstream to see who's throwing them in. Right? Right? Yeah. They care deeply. Let me tell you, here's the reality. The half-life of the current medical education, according to the AMA, 4 years. What does that mean? It means that a doctor who's leaving school today knows more about medicine than one who left 4 years ago, massively. So 50% of the information has grown in 4 years. The bottom line is, these doctors are primarily educated with new information by the drug companies, by the drug salesmen, because there's no physical way they can do everything they're doing, help everybody, and stay educated, because we have 8,000 new drugs that have come out in the last 4 years alone. 8,000. And what's happening is we're constantly being told what to believe. And the people who are teaching us are the researchers, and the researchers usually work for which company? The drug company that's promoting it. We live in a society today that's better living through chemistry or surgery. I want to talk to you about a different approach. An approach that's worked for hundreds of years, probably thousands, but hundreds under a particular title, that's made a huge, huge difference in the quality of people's lives. So, what is health? Put it down. It is energy, it is vitality. And I put with energy, everything in life becomes real and possible. Now the big question, of course, is where does energy come from? Where does all energy come from in everything, whether it be plants or animals? Where does energy come from? That's right, it's made up in your cells. Cells are the factories, they are the building blocks of all life, plant and animal. Now if we think about that, if cells are where energy happens, they're this little biochemical electrical factory. And you've got, to give you an idea, inside your body, 75 trillion cells in your body. 75 trillion. And all they are is life pulsating through you. You are nothing but cells. Every organ in your body, every bit of tissue is made up of nothing but cells. Cells are the basic building block. So think about this then. If you and I want to have lots of energy, we better make sure we take really good care of our what? The cells of our body must be nurtured. Health, life, and death starts, is created, and ends at the cellular level. That's where it all is. As your cells go, so do you go. So what you got to be thinking when you're thinking about health is, what is this going to do to my cells? Now think about what a cell is, the membrane of a cell. Think of this little factory. Is this a sensitive little device, yes or no? You better believe it. That's why we have all this exterior to cover us. And all these orifices have a series of filtering devices before anything can get into that bloodstream to make sure that you're protected. But a lot of us have learned that when we get ill, what we should do is inject foreign matter directly into our bloodstream, directly where cells are going to be impacted, with no filtering device. And we wonder why we don't seem to get better long term. So what we want to do is we want to make sure we take care of those cells. So on page 7 at the top, the quality of our life, this is our core organizing principle for health. The quality of your life is the quality of the life of your what? Cells. So then the big question is, okay, Tony, so what do my cells need to not only survive, but to really thrive? The #1 force of energy that cells use, they must have, is called oxygen. Health is energy. Energy is built at the cellular level. Cells must have oxygen. It is the #1 source of energy on planet Earth, not food. Oxygen. When you are tired, the first thing you must do is get more oxygen to your system. How do they get you to go for 3 days and 3 nights through an insane number of hours, unbelievable intensity, and not be out of your mind with like your body feeling horrible and terrible and tired. How many felt pretty energized most of this weekend long? Say aye. How do we do that? That's right. We were moving and we were breathing, but the movement was stimulating the flow of oxygen through your body. Whenever you have pain, you've been sitting a long time, it's because you don't have any blood flow. The blood flow isn't flowing, so you're not getting fresh oxygen as clearly or as much, and so you experience this thing called pain. Oxygen is the number one source. The second thing that cells need to thrive is nutrients. Nutrients. Not food, because many of you eat what you call food doesn't have any nutrient left in it. Right? It's totally devitalized, and it doesn't give the cells anything. And here's the secret. Anything you put in your body must either be assimilated or eliminated. If your body can't assimilate it, it's giving it no nutrients. And if the body has to eliminate it, that requires a large amount of what? Anybody know? Energy. Most people are eating food that is draining them of life force because it's food that the body has to work overtime to trigger and figure out how to detoxify and change. Working overtime trying to eliminate. So all the nerve energy is being wasted away. That's why people go to sleep and they have more than 6 hours sleep and they're still tired. Or in some cases, maybe more than maybe 7 or 8 hours sleep, right? How embarrassing. But it's because that person wasn't getting oxygen because the whole blood supply is all thickened up trying to deal with the fact that it's not getting nutrients. Anything that destroys or diminishes the flow of oxygen to your system is potentially disease-producing and absolutely lowers your nerve energy, period. Anything. Anything that will increase your energy flow is really anything that will increase the flow of oxygen to the cells of your body. So think about it. Anything that's going to interrupt my flow of oxygen, diminish the flow of oxygen, is disease-producing. Anything that will increase the amount of oxygen that gets to my cells is going to make me more healthy and more energized, period. Now, nutrients, by the way, are important because they help to provide the energy so that your ATP can be continually manufactured, continually reconnected in the cell. That's why you got to have nutrients, not just quote unquote food. And the third thing that all cells need to not only survive but thrive, and this is the thing most people don't do, the ability to eliminate their own waste. What is the process of life? At its basic essence, it's consuming and eliminating. Right? That's basically what all animals do. It's what your cells do. They all consume. They take in nutrients, they take in oxygen, and they spew out and eliminate their waste products. The problem is, what happens if the cell is living in an environment? Where's the environment? Let's say the bloodstream. The blood is delivering these nutrients. The blood is delivering for us this oxygen. But the problem is, what happens if day after day after day, we're constantly putting more poison in, more things the body cannot assimilate, has to eliminate, till the energy of the body gets lowered. Pretty soon you start to accumulate what in the body? Waste, toxicity, toxins. Part of that waste is, watch this right now. Boom! 7 billion liver cells just died. How exciting. But guess what? Boom! Same time, 7 billion new ones were created. Only one problem could come up. If you're living your life in a way where your nerve energy, what most of us would call resistance, is lowered because of the way you're living your life, now there may not be enough energy to eliminate that waste, which is natural waste. The body knows how to eliminate it. And so it's get retained in the blood. Now your blood, day after day, gets more and more toxic. As it gets more and more toxic, to protect you, guess what your body does? Retains more what? Water. In an environment with more water, all these cells that were close together where the blood would flow in, give it its nutrients, now the space expands and it's harder for the nutrients to get to the cells. Also, with all this water, there's less what getting to the cells? Anybody guess? Oxygen. So you have less what? Energy. As you get less energy, all the cells become weaker. As they get weaker and you have less energy, the functional efficiency of your whole body begins to drop. And pretty soon you go, I'm getting old. What you really are is toxic. And what you want to do is eliminate that waste. So I want you to know about 3 studies that are critical to understanding what it takes to be healthy. How many agree that health is energy, that energy comes from the cells? Let's say if you agree with that, say aye. Aye. If that's really true then, and we know that we need those cells to get us oxygen, then let's look at a little research. The first study here is from Dr. Otto Warburg. Now, here's a guy who won the Nobel Prize for his studies in cell respiration. And he had this theory. He said, okay, there's no question in my mind that oxygen is the single most important nutrient that the human body must have. So I wonder what would happen to cells if I were to lower the level of oxygen available to them? What would really happen? He's one of the first people to ask that question, really test it out. And so what he did was, he got his Nobel Prize because he took these cells, and he took them out of various animals, and he put them in bell jars. Now what he did is he reduced the oxygen level down to about 70%, and in some of them, in the case of 60% of what the animal would normally get. So took the cells, let's say, for example, out of these rats, stuck it in this bell jar, reduced the oxygen down to it. Now, what do you think happened to the cells? Some of them did die. Many of them weakened. But here's what's really interesting. A large number of them mutated. They mutated because cells need oxygen, and the force of life is so strong. Did you see the movie Jurassic Park? Do you remember there where they said, oh, these dinosaurs, we made them so they can't, have any new dinosaurs? There's that moment where they find the dinosaur eggs. And they go, uh-oh. The force of life is so strong in your body. Most of you fear cancer. What cancer is cells that have not been given enough oxygen. Something has ruptured something has made them go haywire, whether it be chemicals, but usually it's a lack of oxygen. In order to survive, they're not trying to live in an environment with no oxygen because they want you to live. So without oxygen, they go rampant and grow like crazy. They're growing, they're living. But they take over the space in your body, and that's why you see these lumps coming out. They don't belong there. Cancer is your body trying to stay alive in spite of the fact that you have poisoned it continuously. That's what's really happening. Now here's what's really interesting. What he did is he went through this and he said, wow, I dropped it down 60% lower. Some of them mutate. That's really fascinating. Mutating cells are what kind of cells? Anybody know? Cancer cells. They start growing rapidly. He started thinking about this and wrote this paper about it. Then his student, years later, Dr. Harry Goldblatt, he's a Rockefeller Institute researcher. He decided to take that same hypothesis and really test it. So he decided to take cells out of these rats. And what he did is he did the same thing, but he did two things. He took one bell jar and he put in that rat cells and he reduced the oxygen down to 60% of what they would normally get alive. He took another bell jar, and in this one, he kept the oxygen level at the normal level. Well, the cells that were kept at a normal level of oxygen, same percentage, how do you think they did? Well, guess what he did? He gave them nutrients, and he gave them the same amount of oxygen, and he gave them the room to eliminate the waste. They all lived fine. In fact, they were vibrant. He went to the other ones. What happened? Some died, some weakened, some mutated. He then took the cells back out of the bell jars, re-injected them back in the rats. And the rats from bell jar number 1, the control group, no problem. The rats took the cells back in, went on, continued to have healthy lives. The rats where they took the cells out where there was less oxygen, they injected in the rats. Every single rat developed what? Cancerous tumors. Every single one. What might this tell us about how important oxygen might be in dealing with this scary thing most people think of as cancer? A little important, or maybe the most important thing of all. What would you say? No question. I'll give you another clue. 1 out of 3 Americans gets cancer. 1 out of 7 athletes gets cancer. Why is it that much different? I mean, how could that possibly be? Because they get a lot more what in their system? Oxygen. So you might want to become an athlete quickly. Third study, Dr. Alexis Carrel. This guy's a 2-time Nobel Prize winner, and he did work for the Rockefeller Institute also. And he did some amazing research. He took chickens. Check this out. He took old chickens. An old chicken's like a 12-year-old chicken's an old chicken. Right? That's old in chicken life. I don't know, it's like 7 times that or something. I don't know what it is, but that's an old chicken. He took cells out of chickens, and he took their cells, and he put them in bell jars, and he did the 3 things I just told you that a cell needs. What did he do? He gave it plenty of what? He gave it the what they need, and he made sure that continually the waste products were eliminated. Those 3 things. His goal was, he said, there is no reason for a cell to ever die, and that's why he did the research. He wanted to know what would make it work if you gave it what it needed. Guess what? Chicken 12 years old is about ready to die. How long do you think these chicken cells live? Not forever. They live longer than he did, though. He's dead. The cells got thrown out about 10 years ago. Yeah, they were still alive. Before he died, 3 years before he died, he wrote this research report. His belief was, if you gave the cells what they need, these 3 things, and you avoided physical rupture, what would cause physical rupture? Injury, car accident, smacking something. If you did that, if you gave the cells the oxygen they need, the nutrients they need, eliminated the waste, and you avoided physical rupture, the cells will live forever. Now, this is not some guy from Azusa talking, right? This is a 2-time Nobel Prize winner whose whole focus is cell respiration. And this stuff knows more than anybody you're going to talk to probably about what happens in cells. Now, that's a pretty fascinating thought. So what would be the problem then? The problem is we put our bodies in a position that is unnatural, where we pollute ourselves, and usually as we get older, the pollution builds up more and more and more, and that's what we call aging for the most part. Cells have an unbelievable power. They should not break down. The natural state is to be in a great place. So if cells have all this power, why do they break down? Top of the page, page 9. What causes you to become ill? The answer is simple. The accumulation of toxins in your bloodstream. That's what causes illness, is the accumulation of toxins. Now, why do cells die? Well, cells die, number one, the most common killer of cells is lack of what? So let's say you have a really fatty diet. You got a high-fat diet, and you're tired all the time, and you feel sick, and you're wondering why. We talked about this yesterday. You got a lot of fat in your system. What happens to the red blood cells? They stick together. If they stick together, they move more fast or more slowly through the bloodstream. Which one? More slowly, which means you get more or less oxygen, which means the cells get stronger or weaker, which means some cells may actually die or... That's why we see all these studies that show high fat intake related to cancer. It all comes down to oxygen. Oxygen, that's your baby. Secondly, what causes cells to die? Any disturbance in the electrical fields of the cells will kill them. Any disturbance in the electrical fields of the cells. Every cell is a biochemical electrical force. If you do something, you put something in your body, there are a lot of non-foods you put in your body, or drugs, that disrupt those cells. The cell membrane is very thin. You break that membrane, all the guts of that cell are going to drain right out, the cell's gone. You do anything, you put too much sodium in your body. There's this thing called a sodium-potassium pump. And the sodium-potassium pump is what creates this electrical energy in your body. And if you disturb that, all of a sudden, you've got a major problem. When someone takes strychnine, strychnine goes in and it disturbs the electrical fields of the body, and the cell just short circuits, it's dead. That's what it is. Number one thing that will make your cells weak is the very opposite of what most people think, and that is decreased workload makes your cells weaker. Decreased workload, making less demand on your body, makes cells atrophy and weak. Remember I told you yesterday that they're doing these studies at 3 different universities here in the US? They're taking men and women in their 60s and 70s and making an increased what? Demand on the muscle cells of the body. And when they do that, guess what's happening? They're finding they can create the same level of strength in 60 and 70-year-old men and women as they're finding in 20 and 30-year-old men and women. The problem is when we get older, we have these belief systems that say we're going to have less power, less energy, and we become more toxic, so there's plenty of people around us as evidence. And so pretty soon what occurs? Pretty soon we stop moving, we stop using, we stop demanding. The way to get weak in anything is don't challenge yourself anymore. The reason people get fragile in their bones and get older, they don't challenge anymore. The people that are most physical, make the biggest demand, have the greatest strength. Whether it be the muscles, whether it be the mind, whether it be the soul, whether it be human emotions. When you're challenged, you use your courage, it gets bigger by demand. When you don't use it, it gets weak and small. This is the law of life. You don't want to seek out less challenge. You want to make demands on yourselves, but not demands by putting poison in the body, the demands of physical movement, of using your mind and your body in intense ways.
This session continues on the next CD.